The note the doctor pressed into my palm was folded so tightly it felt like a stone. It read, "They are lying to you. Leave now." That single sentence was the tremor before the earthquake, the moment my 42-year performance as a loving mother began to crumble. That night, I would discover my son, the boy I rescued from a loveless world, was methodically planning to have me erased, committed to a home, stripped of my dignity, and robbed of everything my husband and I had ever built. They thought they were dealing with a frail old woman. They were about to meet the woman she had forgotten she could be. My name is Evelyn Reed, and I am 72 years old. For more than 4 decades, I believed I had crafted the perfect family from broken pieces. My son, Leo, was not of my body, but he was most certainly of my heart. My husband Richard and I adopted him when he was a toddler, a quiet, wide-eyed boy whose silence spoke of a past we promised to heal with unconditional love. We gave him everything: a first-rate education, unwavering affection, and the kind of parental sacrifice that becomes your second nature. When Richard passed away a decade ago, my world shrank, leaving Leo as its center. He, his wife Clara, and my granddaughter Maya were the pillars I leaned on. But on that cold Tuesday in September, I learned that the pillars holding me up were rotten to the core. The appointment with Dr. Eris Thorne should have been mundane. He'd been my physician for 20 years, a man whose stoicism was as reliable as his diagnoses. But that day he was different. A subtle tension radiated from him. His hands, usually so steady, trembled as he took my blood pressure. He asked his questions while staring at my chart, his gaze refusing to meet mine. "Everything looks excellent, Mrs. Reed," he announced, his voice a tightrope walk between professional calm and raw anxiety. "Your heart is strong. Your blood work is pristine. You have a great many years ahead of you." His words were meant to be a comfort, but they sounded like a warning. As I gathered my coat and purse, preparing to leave, I felt him move behind me. It was a swift, almost imperceptible motion. While my back was turned, Dr. Thorne slipped that tightly folded piece of paper into the side pocket of my handbag. It was so discreet I nearly missed it. "Take care of yourself, Evelyn," he said, his smile thin and forced. "And remember, sometimes the people closest to you aren't who they seem." A chill, sharp and unwelcome, snaked its way down my spine. What did he mean? Why the secrecy? My mind raced, but I forced a polite smile and walked out of the sterile quiet of his office into the noisy chaos of the city. The note burned in my purse. I resisted the urge to read it immediately, telling myself I was being paranoid. Eris was a good man. Perhaps he was having a bad day. But his final words clung to me like a shroud. The taxi ride home was a blur of traffic and disjointed thoughts. Dr. Thorne had known my family since Leo was in college. He'd attended Richard's funeral. He was a pillar of professionalism, not a man given to melodrama and secret messages. Why now? Why this? I felt a knot of dread tightening in my stomach, a primal instinct screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. When I walked through my front door, the scene in the living room stopped me cold. Leo, Clara, and Maya were huddled together on the sofa, their conversation a low, urgent murmur. The moment they saw me, a sudden, heavy silence fell over the room. It was as if I had flicked a switch, plunging their secret world into darkness. Clara was holding a sheaf of papers, which she fumbled to hide behind a cushion with a movement that was anything but subtle. "Mom, you're home," Leo said, standing up. His smile was a poorly constructed mask that didn't hide the flicker of panic in his eyes. "How was the appointment? What did Dr. Thorne say?" "Everything is fine, dear," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the frantic pounding in my chest. "He said I'm as healthy as a horse. Perfect health." I watched their faces closely. A fleeting look passed between Leo and Clara, not of relief, but of something I could only describe as profound disappointment. It was there and gone in a second, but I saw it. Why would my perfect health disappoint them? Were they hoping for bad news? "That's wonderful, Grandma," Maya chimed in, but her voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "That means you'll be around for a long, long time." It sounded less like a loving sentiment and more like a grim calculation. The rest of the afternoon was thick with an unspoken tension. Dinner was a sterile affair. My attempts at conversation were met with monosyllabic answers and averted gazes. Leo barely looked at me. Clara seemed to be studying her plate with an intensity usually reserved for works of art. Maya scrolled through her phone, a digital wall between us. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was a weapon, heavy and suffocating. Is something the matter? I finally asked, unable to bear it any longer. No, Mom. Everything's fine, Leo answered, his reply so quick it was obviously a lie. We're just all a bit tired. Long week. It was only Tuesday. Later that evening, I retreated to my bedroom, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. Something was terribly wrong. Dr. Thorne's cryptic behavior, the note, my family's suffocating strangeness, it was all connected. With hands that shook, I finally retrieved the note from my purse and unfolded the small, crisp piece of paper. The handwriting was rushed, jagged with urgency. I read the words once, then twice, my mind struggling to process the monstrous reality they described. Evelyn, your family came to see me yesterday. Clara and Leo. They asked me about your cognitive state, about memory loss, confusion. They wanted me to sign papers certifying that you require specialized institutional care. They said you were becoming a danger to yourself. They want to have you committed. They also asked detailed questions about your assets and Richard's estate. I told them you were perfectly sound of mind, but they were insistent. They are lying to you. Leave now. Run. Eris Thorne. The paper slipped from my numb fingers. I sank onto my bed, the room tilting around me. A buzzing sound filled my ears, drowning out everything but the frantic thumping of my own heart. Committed. My own family. The son I had raised, nurtured, and loved with every fiber of my being. The daughter-in-law I had welcomed as my own. My granddaughter, the light of my life. Suddenly, the day's events snapped into sharp, brutal focus. The disappointed looks when I announced my clean bill of health. The whispers. The hidden papers. They weren't just disappointed, they were furious. Furious that their first attempt to have me declared mentally incompetent had failed. Furious that the trusted family doctor had refused to be an accomplice to their betrayal. I sat there for what felt like hours, a statue carved from shock and grief. Sleep was an impossible dream. Every creak of the old house, every distant siren, sent a jolt of fear through me. I lay in the darkness, listening, my mind replaying 1,000 memories, searching for the moment the love had curdled into this cold, calculating greed. How had I missed it? How had I been so blind to the vipers I had welcomed to my own hearth? The family for whom I had sacrificed everything, my career, my friendships, my own ambitions, was now plotting to strip me of my sanity and my home. The weight of their deception was crushing, a physical pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. They didn't see a mother or a grandmother. They saw an obstacle, a financial problem that needed to be solved, an inconvenient old woman who was taking too long to die. Kindness without boundaries isn't a virtue. It's an invitation for disaster. For 42 years, my kindness had been a boundless ocean, and I had allowed them to drink from it until it ran dry, never once asking what they offered in return. Now, I was beginning to understand the price of my own generosity. They had taken my love for granted, and now they were coming for everything else. But there was something they didn't know, a secret Richard and I had kept for over a decade. They thought they were circling a wounded sheep, but they had no idea they were about to provoke a lioness. The note said to run, and I would, but I wouldn't be running from them. I would be running toward a battle they had started, a battle I was now determined to win. My grief was slowly, terrifyingly, beginning to crystallize into something much harder and sharper, rage. The silence of the house pressed in on me, no longer a comfort, but a threat. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, to twist into a menacing shape. I lay in my bed, rigid with a fear so profound it felt like a premonition. The doctor's note was a brand on my mind, its words searing away 42 years of carefully constructed trust. But a part of me, the part that had rocked a sick child to sleep and beamed with pride at a graduation, still clung to a desperate sliver of hope. It had to be a misunderstanding, a horrible, twisted mistake. That hope was extinguished shortly after 2 a.m. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, followed by the soft murmur of voices from the kitchen below. My breath caught in my throat. I slid out of bed, my movements stealthy, my body a conduit for the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I crept to my bedroom door, pressing my ear against the cool wood. The voices were low, conspiratorial, but the acoustics of the old house carried their words upward with chilling clarity. The old fool actually believed him. Clara's voice dripped with irritation. I laid it on so thick. Told Dr. Thorne she's been leaving the stove on. getting lost on her walks, calling Maya by my name. He just stared at me with those pious eyes and said her tests were perfect. "Calm down, honey," Leo's voice replied, but there was no comfort in it, only a shared frustration. Thorne was a long shot. He knew Dad too well. "We'll find another doctor. A hungrier one. Someone who understands that a signature is worth a consulting fee." My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. A hungrier doctor. They were shopping for a medical opinion, like one might shop for a used car, looking for someone willing to sell them a lie. "But what do we do in the meantime?" It was Maya's voice, sharp and impatient. "I've already paid the deposit for my study abroad program. I need the rest of the tuition money now, not in 10 years when she finally kicks the bucket." "Maya, don't be so crass," Leo chided, but his tone lacked any real conviction. "Though she has a point. We can't wait forever. The equity in this house alone is nearly $1 million. Add that to her pension and the savings Richard left, we could finally live without worrying. Until she dies," Clara finished, her voice as cold and hard as granite. "Look, Leo, I didn't marry into this family to spend my golden years playing nursemaid to a senile woman. I married you because I thought you were set to inherit. It's been 10 years since Richard died, and she's still here, draining what should be our money. Our money." The words echoed in my head, a venomous refrain. The money Richard and I had worked for, saved, and invested with painstaking care. They saw it as theirs. An inheritance they were entitled to, delayed by the inconvenient fact of my continued existence. Rage, pure and hot, began to burn through the shock. "Tomorrow, I'm calling our lawyer," Leo continued, his voice taking on a decisive tone. "I'll ask him what the legal threshold is for declaring someone incompetent without a primary physician's explicit support. There must be other ways. Affidavits from family, a private assessment. And if that doesn't work," Clara added, a cruel new edge to her voice, "we can always resort to making her life a living hell until she agrees to go to a home on her own. We hide her reading glasses. We accidentally unplug her television. We stop cooking her meals. We treat her like what she's become, a burden." "Mom, that's so harsh," Maya said, but then a moment later she added, "Although I am so sick of her hovering. She's always asking where I'm going, who I'm with. It's like living with a warden. And don't even get me started on my 16th birthday. That hideous dress she made me wear? I swore I would get her back for that humiliation one day. The casual cruelty of it, the teenage grudge festering into a motive for such profound betrayal, made my legs tremble. I leaned against the wall for support, the world tilting on its axis. These were the people for whom I had sacrificed everything. The little boy for whom I'd worked double shifts when Richard's business was struggling. The granddaughter whose every scraped knee I had kissed better. They weren't just plotting against me. They were reveling in it. "What bothers me most," Clara spat, "is her whole saintly mother act. Always going on about the sacrifices she made for you, Leo. The truth is, she only adopted you because she was barren. You were a prop to fill the empty space in her life." "That's enough," Leo said, but his voice was weary, not defensive. The dam of my love, built over 42 years, finally shattered. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend the story of our family. He let the poison stand. "Look," he said, his voice dropping lower. "In a few days, I'll sit her down. I'll tell her we found a wonderful assisted living facility. A community with people her own age. If she refuses, we go to Plan B." "What's Plan B?" Maya asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. There was a long pause. The silence stretched, filled with a malevolence that was almost tangible. Then Leo spoke, and his words were the final killing blow. "We make her actually lose her mind," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "We mess with her medication. We move things around in the house and tell her she's imagining it. We create situations, convince her she's had conversations that never happened. In a few weeks, she'll be so disoriented and paranoid that any doctor we bring in will sign the papers without a second thought. She'll fit the diagnosis we've already written for her." The horror of it was absolute. They didn't just want to steal from me. They wanted to dismantle me piece by piece. They wanted to destroy my mind, my identity, my very grip on reality, all to make their theft look like an act of mercy. Betrayal has a sound. It's the sound of a 42-year-old memory turning into a lie. "It's brilliant," Clara breathed, her voice filled with admiration. "And once she's committed, we'll get power of attorney. We can sell this house, liquidate her assets, and no one will ever question us. We'll be the devoted family, lovingly caring for our poor, sick mother from a distance." They laughed. All three of them. a low, triumphant chuckle that echoed up the stairs and into my heart, extinguishing the last embers of love I held for them. They were laughing at my expense, at my naive trust, at the unconditional love I had so freely given. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it forged itself into steel. The grief, the shock, the fear, it all burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. They had declared war on me, and they had made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed their target was weak. "I'll start going through her desk first thing in the morning," Leo said. "There has to be a will. We can get it modified." "Modified how?" Maya asked. "Let's just say," Leo explained, a smirk evident in his voice, "that in a moment of lucidity, Grandma decides to leave everything to the only family who's ever cared for her. Us." "Dad, you're a genius," Maya said, all previous hesitation gone. "We just have to be careful," Clara warned. "What if someone gets suspicious?" "Who?" Leo scoffed. "She has no one. Her friends are all gone or in care homes themselves. We're all she has. She's a lonely old woman who depends on us for everything. Who would possibly stand up for her?" They were right. I had let my world shrink until they were the only ones in it. I was isolated, vulnerable, and in their eyes utterly alone. I heard their footsteps retreat down the hall to their respective rooms. I remained frozen, the chill of the floor seeping into my feet, the doctor's note still clutched in my hand. He had told me to run. But I wasn't going to run like a victim. I was going to retreat, regroup, and plan a counterattack so perfect, so devastating, they would never see it coming. The rest of the night was a blur of focused activity. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. For the first time in years, I felt a surge of clarity, an electrifying purpose. They had underestimated this senile old lady. They thought my mind was fading. In reality, it had never been sharper. At 5 a.m., while the house was cloaked in the deep silence of pre-dawn, I moved. I pulled out my smallest suitcase and packed only the essentials: important documents, a few changes of clothes, my medications, and a small, leather-bound notebook, the key to my secret, the one they knew nothing about. Before I left, a final, crucial idea sparked in my mind. I took out my phone. I often used the voice memo app to record shopping lists or reminders for myself, a habit my family often teased me about. It was the perfect cover. I hit record and placed the phone in my housecoat pocket. Then, feigning forgetfulness, I walked back down the hall, making sure to pass by Leo and Clara's partially open bedroom door. As I'd hoped, they were already awake, their whispers carrying into the hallway. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect a thing?" Clara asked, her voice laced with anxiety. "Positive," Leo replied dismissively. "She's too trusting. And even if she did, what could she do? She has no money of her own, nowhere to go. We're her entire world. It's pathetic, really. A 72-year-old woman, completely dependent," Clara mused with contempt. "She chose this life, staying here to play the doting grandmother. And now, she's going to pay the price for it." Perfect. I had it. An uncut recording of their malice. I retrieved my phone, slipped out the back door, and walked into the cool morning air, not as a victim escaping her abusers, but as a general leaving a compromised base to plan the coming war. On the kitchen table, I left a simple note. "Gone to run a few errands. Back later." They wouldn't suspect a thing. After all, a confused old woman executing a strategic retreat wasn't a possibility they had ever considered. The rising sun cast long shadows as the taxi whisked me away from the house I'd called home for nearly 50 years. With every mile that passed, the suffocating weight of my old life began to lift, replaced by a strange and exhilarating sense of freedom. They thought I had nowhere to go. They believed I had no resources. They had built their entire monstrous plan on the foundation of my supposed helplessness. That foundation was about to be obliterated. My first stop was not a friend's house or a shelter, but the downtown branch of a major international bank. It was Wednesday morning. I knew I had a precious few hours before their mild annoyance at my absence would curdle into genuine panic. Not for my well-being, but for the loss of their asset. Inside the cool, marble-floored bank, I approached the private client services desk. The young teller, a woman named Sarah with kind eyes, looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern when I requested to withdraw $10,000 in cash. "Are you certain, Mrs. Reed?" she asked softly. "That's a significant amount of cash to carry." Her concern was genuine, a stark contrast to the feigned affection I had been living with. "Completely certain, my dear," I replied, my voice firm and clear. "I have some urgent personal matters to attend to." But the cash was just the first step. The real reason I was there was to verify the status of my secret, my arsenal. I was ushered into a quiet, wood-paneled office to meet with a senior wealth manager. I provided him with a passport I kept hidden for this exact purpose and a series of account numbers from the leather-bound notebook I'd packed. He typed silently for a few moments, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at me, a flicker of profound respect in his eyes. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Reed," he said. "The accounts are secure and fully accessible to you. The total current valuation is $5.5 million. He said the number calmly, as if discussing the weather, but to me, it was the sound of my liberation. That money, along with 3 overseas properties Richard had shrewdly invested in, was the secret he had left me. When my husband was in his final years, he had seen a flicker of something in Leo, a casual sense of entitlement, a subtle resentment masked as concern. Richard was a brilliant man, not just in business, but as a judge of character. "Evelyn," he had told me, his voice weak but his eyes sharp, "love is a beautiful thing, but it can make us blind. I want you to be safe, not just comfortable. I'm setting this up for you, and only you. Don't tell Leo. Let him build his own life. This is your security, your independence. Use it if you ever need to. I hope you never do." For 10 years, I hadn't needed it. I had lived modestly off my pension and Richard's smaller, declared estate, wanting to believe in the goodness of the son I had raised. I wanted him to love me for me, not for a hidden fortune. Now, I saw Richard's wisdom not as cynicism, but as the ultimate act of love, a shield he had forged for me from beyond the grave. Leo hadn't just failed the test. He had set the test paper on fire. My next stop was the Grand Excelsior Hotel, the most elegant and discreet establishment in the city. I needed a sanctuary, a base of operations where I could think clearly and plan my next moves without fear. As I checked in, the receptionist, an impeccably dressed woman in her 40s, asked, "And how long will you be staying with us, madam?" "I'm not entirely sure," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. "It could be a week. It could be a month. It all depends on how a certain family business, a hostile takeover, you might say, unfolds." She nodded with the polished discretion of her profession and assigned me a suite on the penthouse floor. Riding up in the silent, gilded elevator, I felt a strange mix of terror and elation. For the first time in over a decade, I was entirely in control of my own destiny. The suite was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a sprawling map of the world I was about to re-enter. I sank into a plush velvet sofa, and for the first time since reading Dr. Thorne's note, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my grief. The tears came then, hot and unrestrained. I cried for the 42 years of love I now saw as a one-sided transaction. I cried for the loss of the son I thought I knew. I cried for the naive, trusting woman I had been, the woman who had let her world shrink to the size of 4 walls and a family that saw her as a placeholder. But as the tears subsided, they washed away the last vestiges of the victim. In their place was a cold, clear purpose. I was not just a grieving mother. I was a wealthy, intelligent woman who had been grievously wronged. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. It was a lesson they were going to learn, expensively. I took out my notebook and began to make a list. Hire the best, most ruthless lawyer in the city. Engage a private investigator to dig into every corner of their lives. Secure all my known assets before they can touch them. Plan the counteroffensive. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone began to ring. It was Leo. I let it ring 4 times before answering, taking a deep, calming breath. "Mom, where are you?" His voice was tight with irritation, clumsily disguised as concern. "It's after 2. You're not back. We were getting worried." "I'm perfectly fine, dear," I replied, my voice smooth as silk. "I just decided to take a day for myself. It's been a while." There was a beat of silence on the other end. "A day for yourself? What does that mean?" "Where are you?" he demanded, the mask of concern slipping to reveal the frustrated controller underneath. "I'm downtown, attending to some matters I've neglected for too long," I said, enjoying the deliberate vagueness. "Don't worry about me. I'll be back when I'm done." "Mom, this isn't like you," he insisted, his voice rising. "You always tell us your plans. Clara and Maya are worried sick. We need to know where you are." For the first time in years, I recognized the panic in his voice for what it was. It wasn't fear for my safety. It was the fear of an embezzler who discovers the books are about to be audited. He had lost control. "You know, Leo, I said, my voice infused with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I am 72 years old. I believe I've earned the right to go where I please without asking for permission. Another silence, longer this time. Mom, you're scaring me, he said, and then came the first move from their playbook. You don't sound like yourself. Did you take your medication this morning? He was already planting the seeds, building the narrative of the confused, unstable old woman. Oh, I've taken my medication, Leo, I replied, letting a chill enter my voice. And my eyes have never been more open. I've never felt more like myself. I hung up before he could respond. I immediately powered off the phone. I needed silence. I needed focus. I spent the next hour researching law firms. I wasn't looking for a sympathetic family lawyer. I was looking for a shark. I found her in Ms. Diana Sterling, senior partner at Sterling, Vance & Associates, a woman known for her ferocious litigation style and a client list that included billionaires and corporations. Her fee was astronomical. It was perfect. When I called her office, I was initially told she was booked for months. Please tell Ms. Sterling, I said to her assistant, that Evelyn Reed wishes to retain her services for a complex case of elder fraud and conspiracy involving a high-value estate. My liquid assets for this matter are in excess of $5 million. I was given an appointment for 3 o'clock that same afternoon. As I prepared to leave the hotel, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was no longer the soft, unassuming grandmother. There was a glint of steel in her eyes. Richard had left me a shield. It was time to show my family that I knew how to use it as a sword. The offices of Sterling, Vance & Associates were the embodiment of power. Located on the top floor of a glass skyscraper, they offered a godlike view of the city below. The air was cool and smelled faintly of expensive leather and ambition. I was led into a corner office where Ms. Diana Sterling stood waiting for me. She was a woman in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She didn't radiate warmth. She radiated competence. Mrs. Reed, she said, her voice crisp and direct as she shook my hand. Diana Sterling, your call was compelling. Please have a seat. Tell me what's going on. For the next hour, I laid out the entire story. I started with the unsettling doctor's visit, the secret note, and the tense atmosphere at home. I didn't let emotion cloud the facts. I spoke with the clarity of a woman who had seen the abyss and had no intention of falling into it. When I got to the part about the overheard conversation, Diana leaned forward, her focus absolute. I then took out my phone. They believe I use this for grocery lists, I explained. It seems my harmless old lady habits have their uses. I pressed play. The hushed, venomous whispers of my family filled the silent, expensive office. Clara's contempt, Maya's selfish impatience, and Leo's chillingly calm voice detailing Plan B, the methodical plot to drive me insane. Diana listened without interruption, her expression hardening with every word. When the recording ended, she sat back in her chair, a grim, assessing look on her face. In 25 years of practicing law, she said slowly, I have seen some depraved acts of greed. But the cold-blooded, premeditated nature of this, it's in a class of its own. This isn't just a civil matter, Mrs. Reed. What your family is planning constitutes a conspiracy to commit multiple felonies. Elder abuse, fraud, unlawful imprisonment, potentially even assault through the forced administration of incorrect medication. I don't just want to stop them, Miss Sterling, I said, my voice low and steady. I want to dismantle them. I want to ensure they can never harm anyone, including themselves, again. I want justice that is as cold and calculated as their betrayal. A slow smile spread across Diana's face. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted her favorite prey. Mrs. Reed, I believe you and I are going to get along splendidly. But to do this right, we need more than just this recording. We need to build an ironclad case. We need to know everything about them. Every secret, every debt, every lie. How do we do that? I asked. My firm's partner, Marcus Vance, is one of the best private investigators in the country, she explained. He's an ex-homicide detective with a knack for finding what people want to keep buried. I want to put him on this immediately. I want him to run a full workup on your son, your daughter-in-law, and your granddaughter. Finances, communications, associations. We turn over every stone until we have a mountain of leverage. Do it, I said without hesitation. Whatever it costs. Good, Diana nodded. She made a quick call. Minutes later, Marcus Vance entered the office. He was the opposite of Diana's polished exterior. He was a big man with a weathered face, rumpled clothes, and eyes that held a weary intelligence. He looked like he'd seen the worst of humanity and wasn't surprised by any of it. Diana brought him up to speed quickly. Marcus listened, his expression unchanging, as if hearing about a family plotting to destroy their matriarch was just another Tuesday. "The recording is gold," he said in a gravelly voice when Diana finished. "But the defense will try to paint you, Mrs. Reed, as a confused, vindictive old woman who misinterpreted things. Our job is to prove this wasn't a one-off conversation. It's a pattern of behavior. We need to corroborate it with evidence of their motive, desperation. My son, Leo," I began. He was a successful project manager. "At least, I thought he was." "People's fortunes change," Marcus grunted. "I'll start with their financials. Debt is the mother of all bad decisions. I'll also look into their social circles, online activity. People get sloppy when they think no one's watching." He turned to me. "I need you to do something for me, Mrs. Reed. Turn your phone back on. Let them contact you. Record every call. Their panic will make them careless." Leaving Diana's office, I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't known was possible. I was no longer a lone victim. I had a team, a shark and a bloodhound. The money Richard had left me wasn't just a shield, it was an army. Back in the safety of my hotel suite, I followed Marcus's instructions. I powered on my phone. It exploded with notifications. 37 missed calls from Leo. 15 from Clara. 8 from Maya. The text messages painted a picture of escalating panic. The first texts were feigning concern. "Mom, please answer. We are very worried." Then came frustration. "Martha, this isn't funny. If you don't respond, we're calling the police." Finally, thinly veiled threats. "Grandma, where are you? Dad says you're going to get yourself into trouble if you don't come home." I decided to reply only to Leo, a simple, calculated message. "I am safe. I will be in touch when I am ready." The response was immediate. His call came through before I even put the phone down. I took a deep breath, pressed the record button, and answered. "Mom. Finally. Where in God's name have you been?" His voice was a raw mix of fury and fear. "I've been taking care of myself, Leo," I replied, my voice a placid lake. "It's been a very enlightening day." "This has to stop," he snapped, dispensing with any pretense of worry. "You can't just vanish. We are your family. We have a right to know where you are." "A right," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air between us. "That's a very interesting choice of words. Since when does my family have a right over my movements?" "Since you started acting erratically," he shot back. And there it was again. The narrative. He was trying to build his case, right here on the phone. "Erratic?" I questioned, feigning confusion. "Is it erratic for a woman my age to desire a day of independence? To spend her own money as she sees fit?" "Yes, when she's never done it before." "Mom, listen to me," his voice shifted, becoming softer, more condescending. "I think you need to talk to someone. A professional. You're not acting like yourself." "A professional?" I asked, playing along. "What kind of professional were you thinking of, Leo?" "A therapist, Mom. Maybe a psychiatrist. Someone who can help you manage these changes in your behavior." It was perfect. He was admitting his intentions, his strategy, on a recorded line. "You know what, son?" I said, letting a hint of weary agreement enter my voice. "I think you're absolutely right. I do need specialized help." I could almost hear his sigh of relief through the phone. "I'm so glad you understand, Mom. We can find someone for you tomorrow." "Yes," I continued. "I understand perfectly. I need a specialist in forensic accounting to trace financial fraud. I need a specialist in elder abuse law. And I most definitely need a specialist in identifying and prosecuting criminal conspiracy. Because that is exactly what you, your wife, and your daughter have been doing to me." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was the sound of a predator realizing it has just walked into a carefully laid trap. "Mom, what are you talking about?" he stammered, his voice suddenly small. "I'm talking about the fact that I know everything, Leo," I said, my voice dropping to an icy calm. "I know about your plan to have me committed. I know about the doctors you've tried to manipulate. I know about Plan B. I know everything." That's crazy talk," he sputtered, but the conviction was gone. "You're not well. You're confused. Am I confused about the conversation you all had in the kitchen at 2 o'clock this morning? Because I have a crystal clear memory of it. Word for word. This time, the silence was even longer, heavier. He knew he was caught. "Mom," he finally whispered, his voice pleading. "Come home. We can talk about this. We can fix this." "No, Leo. There is nothing to fix, I said, the finality of it like a closing door. A family doesn't do what you have done. What you are is a stranger to me now. Please. I am going to give you one chance, I said, delivering a line Diana had suggested. One chance to confess everything, return every cent you have ever taken, and apologize. Not to me. To the memory of the father who gave you a life you've squandered. We have nothing to confess, he replied, a pathetic attempt at defiance. His voice was trembling. Then I will see you in court, I said. And I promise you, Leo, it will be a day you will regret for the rest of your life. I ended the call and saved the recording. The first shot had been fired. My team was in place, and the hunt had officially begun. They thought they were the predators. They were about to discover they were the prey. The days that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare, orchestrated by Diana and executed by Marcus. While my family spiraled into a panic, we remained calm, gathering the ammunition we would need to win the war. I stayed in my hotel suite, which had become my command center. Every morning, Marcus Vance would deliver a new report, and with each one, the pristine facade of my family crumbled further, revealing a rot that was deeper and more pervasive than I could have ever imagined. On Friday morning, Marcus arrived with his first bombshell. He sat across from me in the suite's sunlit living room, his face impassive as he laid out a series of documents on the coffee table. Let's start with your son, Leo, he began, his voice a low rumble. You were under the impression he was a successful project manager at a top engineering firm? Yes, I said. He was promoted just last year. Or so he told me. Marcus slid a termination letter across the table. Leo was fired 8 months ago, he said bluntly. Gross negligence. He signed off on a project that used substandard materials, leading to a major structural failure. The company settled out of court to avoid a bigger scandal, but Leo was the scapegoat. He's been unemployed ever since. I stared at the letter, my mind reeling. For 8 months, he had been pretending to go to work every morning. For 8 months, he had been living a lie. But their finances? They live so well. The new car, Maya's expensive school. They've been living off you, Marcus stated, tapping another file. We pulled his bank records. Every month, there's a significant cash withdrawal that corresponds with a debit from your pension account, which you gave him access to for emergencies. He's also been quietly liquidating some of your smaller stock holdings you made him a co-signer on years ago. But that's not the worst of it. He paused, his gaze meeting mine. Leo has a gambling problem. A serious one. Online sports betting. He's over $100,000 in debt to a rather unsavory offshore bookie. The kind of people who don't send polite reminder letters. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The desperation. The urgency. This wasn't just about greed. It was about survival. He was being crushed by debts he couldn't pay and was willing to sacrifice his own mother to save himself. Now for Clara, Marcus continued, moving to the next file. She's been a busy woman. He laid out copies of several credit card statements. The cards were in my name. In the last 6 months, your daughter-in-law has opened 5 high-limit credit cards using your personal information, which she likely stole from your desk. The total debt is currently approaching $50,000. He pushed photos across the table. Photos of Clara shopping at designer boutiques, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. Then he showed me flight confirmations. Remember when they told you they had to rush to visit Clara's sick mother in Florida last month? I nodded, my stomach churning. I remembered her manufactured tears, the urgency in her voice. I had even given them $1,000 in cash for travel expenses. Her mother is in perfect health and lives in Ohio, Marcus said grimly. Clara and Leo spent a week at a 5-star resort in the Florida Keys. They paid for it with one of the fraudulent credit cards. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They had used a story of family illness to manipulate me, all while vacationing on money they were stealing in my name. There's more, Marcus said, his voice softening slightly, as if bracing me for the next blow. Clara has been having an affair. For the past 2 years. With your next-door neighbor, David. David? Sweet, quiet David, whose wife Carol brought me soup whenever I had a cold. It seemed impossible. But Marcus had the proof. Photographs of Clara and David meeting at a cheap motel on the edge of town, videos of them kissing in his car. They met every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, while Leo thought she was at her yoga class, and I thought she was running errands. The irony was sickening. While they were plotting to have me locked away for being mentally unstable, their own lives were a cesspool of lies, debt, and infidelity. Finally, he came to the last file. Maya's. My heart ached at the sight of her name. And my granddaughter? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She has her secrets too, Mrs. Reed, Marcus said gently. She's 3 months pregnant. I gasped. She's told her parents the father is a classmate, but that's a lie. The real father is one of her professors, a married man in his 50s who promised to leave his wife for her. He has since cut off all contact. Oh, that poor, foolish girl, I murmured, a wave of pity washing over me despite my anger. She's desperate, Marcus agreed, which is why she's been so easily manipulated by her parents. But she's also been proactive in her own right. He showed me screenshots of text messages. Maya, telling her friends that I was suffering from advanced Alzheimer's and that the family was struggling with the medical bills. She had used that story to borrow several $1,000s from them, money she never intended to repay. Each revelation was a fresh stab wound. They weren't just a family with a dark plan. They were 3 individuals, each drowning in their own sea of deception, united only by their desire to use me as a life raft. They weren't just trying to rob me of my future. They had been actively robbing me for months, if not years. So, what's our next move? I asked Diana, who had joined us via video call to hear the report. Now that we have the motive, Diana said, her voice sharp with strategic excitement, we move to phase 2. We don't just want to defend against their actions. We want to provoke them into incriminating themselves further, publicly. We're going to let them dig their own graves a little deeper, and then we're going to hand them a shovel. That afternoon, I began my own transformation. I couldn't fight a war looking like a casualty. I went to the city's finest boutiques, stores I hadn't set foot in for decades. I bought 3 elegant dresses, a powerful black one, a defiant red one, and a regal emerald green one. I bought new shoes, a designer handbag, and had my hair styled at the most exclusive salon in the city. The young stylist, a vibrant woman named Sophia, looked at my reflection in the mirror. You have such a beautiful bone structure, she said. You're hiding it. For a long time, I replied honestly. I thought my only role was to be invisible, to support everyone else. Well, Sophia declared, snipping away years of neglect with her scissors, invisibility is officially overrated. When she was finished, I looked at the woman in the mirror and barely recognized her. My hair was styled in a chic, modern cut that highlighted my eyes. I looked strong. I looked formidable. I looked like a woman who was not to be trifled with. That evening, dressed in my new emerald gown and dining alone in the hotel's 5-star restaurant, I decided it was time to rattle their cage again. I called Leo. Mom. Thank God. Where are you? His voice was a frantic mess, the anger from our last call replaced with sheer desperation. I've been taking care of myself, Leo, I said, swirling the wine in my glass. It's amazing what a little self-care can do for one's perspective. This has to stop. You can't just keep disappearing. We're your family. We're filing a missing persons report. Are you? I asked, my voice dripping with amusement. And what will you tell them? That your perfectly healthy, financially independent mother has decided to take a vacation from your suffocating presence? I'm sure the police will find that a matter of urgent national security. There was a sputtering on the other end. He was losing control, and he knew it. Mom, you need help, he said, falling back on his only remaining strategy. Your behavior is becoming more and more erratic. Erratic, I repeated, savoring the word. You know, Leo, I've been thinking about what you said. About needing a specialist. And I found one. In fact, I found a whole team of them. My lawyer, Ms. Diana Sterling, is a specialist in sending people like you to prison for a very long time. And my investigator, Mr. Marcus Vance, is a specialist in uncovering every dirty little secret you and your wife have been hiding. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the faint clinking of cutlery from the other side of the restaurant. You know what else I've discovered, Leo? I continued, my voice a silken threat. I know you lost your job 8 months ago. I know about your $100,000 gambling debt. I know about the fraudulent credit cards. I know about the affair Clara is having with our neighbor David. And I know secrets about Maya that would make your hair stand on end. So you see, son, I'm not the one who is confused. I'm the one who finally sees everything clearly. You're delirious, he whispered, but it was the weakest lie he had ever told. Am I? I asked. Then I suppose it's also a delusion that last night, the 3 of you met with a man named Paul Hayes, a known document forger, to create a fake medical history for me. The sharp intake of breath on his end was my victory. Marcus's final piece of intel had hit its mark. You see, Leo, I finished, the game is over. You just don't know it yet. You wanted to make me a prisoner in my own mind. Instead, you've just handed me the keys to your cage. Enjoy your evening. I hung up, took a sip of my wine, and smiled. The rot had been revealed. The next step was to expose it to the light. The plan Diana Sterling devised for Phase 2 was nothing short of brilliant. It was audacious, theatrical, and designed for maximum psychological impact. Instead of waiting for them to make their next move in the shadows, we were going to force them out into the blinding light of public humiliation. We wouldn't just counter their narrative. We would shatter it in the most spectacular way possible. On Monday morning, I dressed for battle. I chose the elegant black power suit I had purchased, pairing it with a string of my late husband Richard's pearls, a reminder of the man whose foresight was funding this war. I looked every bit the wealthy, powerful matriarch they had failed to see. My first appointment was at Richardson and Associates, the city's most prestigious real estate firm. I had scheduled a meeting with their top agent, a slick, impeccably dressed man named Rick, to discuss luxury properties. My stated intention: to purchase a new home, something in the $2 million range. Mrs. Reed, a pleasure to meet you, Rick said, greeting me with a dazzling smile. I understand you're in the market for a significant upgrade to your lifestyle. That's right, Rick, I replied with a confidence that felt intoxicatingly real. I'm looking for a home that reflects a new chapter. Something modern, secure, and entirely mine. Rick was, of course, a pawn in our game, though he didn't know it. Marcus had done his research. He knew that Leo, in his spiraling desperation, had also made an appointment at the very same firm for that very same morning. His goal was to get a valuation on my house, the first step in their plan to liquidate my assets. Our timing was coordinated with military precision. At 11 o'clock, Rick was in the middle of showing me the schematics for a stunning penthouse apartment when I heard their voices at the reception desk. Leo, Clara, and Maya had arrived. Excuse me for a moment, Rick, I said, placing a hand on his arm. I believe some acquaintances of mine have just arrived. We walked from the private viewing room back into the main lobby. And there they were, the three of them, huddled with another agent, their faces a mixture of greed and anxiety. We're looking to sell a property, I heard Leo say, his voice trying for an authoritative tone. It's my mother's house. She's not well, unfortunately, and we have the power of attorney to manage her affairs. The agent looked skeptical. Power of attorney? Of course. I'll just need to see the official documentation before we can proceed. Well, we're in the final stages of having the papers processed, Clara jumped in nervously. A mere formality. We just wanted to get ahead of the curve with an appraisal. It was the perfect moment. I chose my entrance. Hello, family, I said, my voice clear and ringing, cutting through the lobby's quiet hum. Their heads snapped in my direction. The blood drained from Leo's face, leaving him a ghastly shade of pale. Clara's mouth fell open in a silent, comical "oh." Maya physically flinched, taking a step backward as if she'd seen a ghost. Mom, Leo stammered, his eyes wide with disbelief and panic. What are you doing here? The same thing you are, it seems, I replied, descending the short flight of stairs with a regal calm I didn't know I possessed. Though, I'm on the buying side of the equation, not the selling. Rick, my agent, ever the professional, stepped forward with a smile. Mrs. Reed, do you know these people? Unfortunately, yes, I said, my voice laced with a cool disappointment that was more cutting than any shout. This is my son Leo, his wife Clara, and my granddaughter Maya. This is my family. Or rather, what I used to believe was my family. Mom, we need to talk, Leo hissed, trying to regain some semblance of control. In private? In private? I think not, I countered, my voice rising just enough to draw the attention of the other clients and agents in the lobby. What is there to talk about, Leo? The fact that you're attempting to sell my home out from under me without my permission? Or perhaps we should discuss the power of attorney you just claimed to have, which is a complete and utter fabrication. Their agent looked from them to me, his expression souring with the realization that he had walked into a legal minefield. Excuse me, he interrupted stiffly. If there is a legal dispute regarding ownership of the property, our firm cannot be involved until it is resolved. There's no dispute, Clara said, her voice high and desperate. It's just, she's been very confused lately. She doesn't always know what she's saying. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Confused? Is that what you call it? I turned to Rick, my own agent. Does it seem confused to you, Rick, That I'm here to make a cash offer on a $2 million property? Rick's jaw practically hit the polished floor. I heard Maya whisper, $2 million? Oh yes, dear granddaughter, I said, turning my gaze on her and offering a smile that was all ice. It turns out your senile old grandmother has been keeping a few secrets of her own. A nest egg for a rainy day. And believe me, the forecast is calling for a hurricane. I then took out my phone and dialed Diana Sterling's number, putting it on speaker for all to hear. Diana, it's Evelyn Reed. I'm here at Richardson and Associates Realty. It appears my family has arrived as well. They're attempting to sell my property and are falsely claiming to have power of attorney. I believe this constitutes attempted fraud. Could you please send a team from your office to document the situation? Of course, Evelyn. Diana's crisp voice filled the lobby. I'll have 2 litigators and a notary there in 15 minutes. Don't let them leave. I hung up and looked at my shell-shocked family. Now, I announced to the captivated audience in the real estate office, we are all going to wait here for my lawyers to arrive. And when they do, you can explain to them exactly what legal documents you possess, how you came by them, and why you believe you have the right to liquidate my assets. I'm sure it will be a fascinating story. Leo took a step toward me, his face a mask of desperation. Mom, please. This is a misunderstanding. Let's just go home and sort this out. No, I said firmly, holding up a hand to stop him. I will not be going home. That house stopped being my home the moment you decided to turn it into a prison. My home is no longer a place you are welcome. Clara, seeing her dreams of $1 million payday evaporating before her eyes, burst into tears. But they were not tears of remorse. They were the hot, angry tears of a thwarted thief. Martha, please, she sobbed, using my name as if it were a weapon. We're family. Everything we've done, we did it for your own good. For my own good? I asked, my voice ringing with incredulous rage. Was it for my own good when you opened 5 fraudulent credit cards in my name? Was it for my own good when you planned to drug me into a state of confusion? Was it for my own good when you conspired with a criminal to forge my medical history and my will? Tell me, Clara, which part of this elaborate, cruel scheme was for my benefit? With each question, another layer of their composure was stripped away. The other clients and employees were now openly staring, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. We don't know what you're talking about. Maya cried a pathetic last-ditch lie. You don't. I took out my phone again, the device that had become my greatest weapon. I played the recording of Leo's voice from the kitchen. We make her actually lose her mind. We mess with her medication. We move things around. In a few weeks, she'll be so disoriented and paranoid that any doctor we bring in will sign the papers. The silence that followed was so profound you could hear a pin drop. The disgust on the faces of the onlookers intensified, hardening into open contempt. That recording is illegal. Clara shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. Not in a one-party consent state, I replied calmly, parroting the words Diana had taught me. And certainly not when it's recorded to document a felony in progress. Just then, 2 sharply dressed lawyers from Diana's firm swept into the lobby, followed by a notary carrying a briefcase. They moved with an aura of intimidating efficiency. Mrs. Reed, one of them said, his voice projecting authority. We're from Sterling, Vance and Associates. We understand there are individuals here claiming to have legal authority over your estate. That's correct, I said, gesturing toward my family, who seemed to shrink under the lawyer's gaze. I would like you to officially document that these 3 individuals have no power of attorney, no legal standing over my properties or finances, and that this attempt to sell my home constitutes fraud. One of the lawyers turned to Leo. Sir, I'd like to see the documentation you mentioned that grants you the authority to act on Mrs. Reed's behalf. Leo opened and closed his mouth, no words coming out. He looked like a fish gasping for air. In other words, I declared, my voice resonating with finality, they have no documentation because they have no authority. What they have is a criminal conspiracy. And now, thanks to all of you, I said, gesturing to the room at large, they also have witnesses. The public showdown was over. Their reputation, the carefully crafted image of the perfect family, was left in smoldering ruins on the marble floor of the real estate office. And this was only the beginning. The aftermath of the real estate office confrontation was a chaotic blur of sputtered threats and pathetic pleas. As I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, my family trailed behind me like a Greek chorus of the damned. Mom, wait! Leo yelled, his face blotchy with rage and humiliation. You can't do this. We can fix this. Grandma, please. Maya cried, tears streaming down her face. I love you. This is all a terrible mistake. Clara, however, had abandoned all pretense of affection. Her face was a twisted mask of pure hatred. You bitter old woman, she screamed as I climbed into the waiting town car Diana had sent for me. You've been holding that money over our heads for years. Leo gave you the best years of his life, and this is how you repay him. I paused, turning to face her from the car window. The best years of his life? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Do you mean the years I worked 2 jobs so he could attend private school? The years I gave up my own career path to raise him? Those years. You chose to adopt him, she spat back. No one forced you. And now you act like we owe you something. I don't expect gratitude, I replied, my voice as cold as ice. I simply expect you not to steal from me, not to betray me, and not to plot to have me mentally destroyed for your own financial gain. Apparently, that was too high a bar. I gave the driver a nod, and the car pulled away, leaving them shouting on the sidewalk, enveloped in their own disgrace. That night, it was time for the next phase of the offensive. Confronting them in person was one thing, but Diana and I knew that to truly seize control of the narrative, we had to take the story to a much larger arena. We were going to take it public. From the safety of my hotel suite, I opened my laptop, created an account on the country's most popular live streaming platform, and typed in a simple, compelling title for my broadcast. My family tried to steal my mind. I'm taking my story back. At exactly 8 p.m., I clicked go live. I sat in a comfortable armchair, dressed in the defiant red dress, my expression calm and resolute. At first, the viewer count was in the single digits. Then it climbed to 50. Then 100. Good evening, I began, looking directly into the small camera lens. My name is Evelyn Reed. I am 72 years old. And for the last week, I have been a ghost in my own life. Tonight, I am going to tell you a story about love, sacrifice, and the most devastating betrayal a mother can endure. It's a story about a perfect family and the monstrous secrets they keep. Within 20 minutes, I had over 1,000 viewers. By the end of the hour, that number had swelled to more than 10,000. I told them everything. I spoke of adopting Leo, of the love Richard and I had poured into him. I described the chilling visit to Dr. Thorne and his life-saving note. I detailed the overheard conversation, the fraudulent credit cards, the affair, the gambling debts. I played snippets of the recordings, their venomous words filling the virtual space. The live chat scrolled by in a blur of outrage and support. This is horrifying. Justice for Evelyn. What a despicable family. I am so sorry you went through this. My own father was a victim of elder abuse. Thank you for your courage. Sue them for everything they don't have. Then, in the middle of my broadcast, I decided to do something unscripted. If this story sounds familiar, I said, my voice thick with emotion. If you've seen this happen to someone you love, or if you've experienced it yourself, I want you to share this video. Use the hashtag #JusticeForEvelyn. Let's shine a light so bright on this issue that these predators have nowhere left to hide. You are not alone. Just as I finished speaking, my phone, which I had placed beside my laptop, buzzed with an incoming call. It was Maya. On an impulse, I answered and put it on speaker. Grandma, please, you have to stop this, she sobbed, her voice instantly recognizable. Turn off the stream. You're ruining our lives. I'm ruining your lives? I repeated, ensuring the microphone picked up every word. The live chat went wild. Maya, did you ever stop to think that you all had already ruined mine? Everyone is watching. My friends, my professors, the whole world. I can't show my face anywhere. And how do you think I would have felt, Maya? I countered, my voice rising with a righteous anger. Committed to a nursing home against my will? Drugged into a stupor? Stripped of my name, my memories, and my money? Tell me, how would that have felt? It wasn't going to happen, she insisted weakly. We were just stressed out. We were exploring options. Exploring options? I shouted, the dam of my composure finally breaking. Maya, I changed your diapers. I taught you how to read. I held you every single time you had a nightmare. And you stood by and listened while your parents planned my destruction. You were an accomplice. The silence on her end was a confession. The viewers seized on it. She's guilty. She knew everything. No remorse at all. Just worried about her reputation. Don't let her manipulate you, Evelyn. Grandma, Maya finally whispered, her voice cracking. I needed money for school. And for other things. You thought you could participate in a plot to have me mentally erased, and then use my money to fund your future? I pressed. Is that it? Explain it, Maya. Explain it to the 15,000 people who are listening right now. Another silence, then a choked, barely audible. How did you know about? Because I am not the confused old woman you all decided I was. I thundered. I know everything, Maya. I know about your lies to your friends. I know about your pregnancy. I know things about you that could destroy your future far more effectively than this live stream ever could. She hung up immediately. The damage was done. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Leo. He wasn't crying. He was roaring. Mom, you turn this off right now, or so help me God, he bellowed. Hello, Leo, I said sweetly. Welcome to the show. You currently have an audience of about 20,000 people. Is there something you'd like to say to them? This is slander. It's defamation. I'm going to sue you for every penny you have. Is it slander to play audio of your own voice plotting a felony? I asked calmly. Is it slander to show bank statements proving your wife committed fraud? Is it slander to expose your gambling debts? Because I have the receipts for all of it. Those recordings are inadmissible, he yelled. Not in this state, son, I replied coolly. But let's talk about something else. Do you want to explain to all these nice people why you paid a document forger named Paul Hayes $50,000 in cash yesterday? The silence that followed was so profound, so absolute, it felt like the entire internet held its breath. How? He stammered, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. How could you possibly know that? Because Leo, I said, delivering the checkmate. While you were hiring a criminal, my investigator was talking to his law enforcement contacts. It turns out Paul Hayes has been a federal informant for the last 6 months. Congratulations, son. Your little family drama just went federal. The FBI has you on tape committing a felony. You're not just facing family court anymore. The live chat exploded. FBI! 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 It's a federal case. They are so busted. Mrs. Reed, you are a legend. This is the best live stream I have ever seen. Mom. Leo's voice was broken now, all the fury gone, replaced by the hollow sound of utter defeat. Please stop this. We can fix it. We're family. Are we, Leo? I asked, a genuine sadness in my voice. A family doesn't do this. What you are is a criminal conspiracy that happens to share my last name. It wasn't personal, you told yourself. Just business. Well, this is my business now. We gave you 42 years of our lives, he pleaded, a last pathetic attempt at manipulation. No, Leo. I gave you 42 years of my life, I corrected him. I gave you everything, and you were just waiting for me to die. You know, when you planned to destroy my mind, it wasn't personal for you. And from now on, as I watch the justice system dismantle your lives, it won't be personal for me either. I hung up the phone. I looked back at the camera, my eyes clear. And that, I said to the now 30,000 viewers, was my family. The war is not over, but the tide has turned. Thank you for listening. Good night. I ended the stream. The silence of the hotel room rushed back in, but I didn't feel alone. I felt seen. I felt heard. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, unapologetically powerful. The morning after my live stream, the world felt different. My story was no longer a private agony. It had become a public firestorm. The hashtag Justice for Evelyn was trending nationally. My phone, which I had left on silent, was a cascade of notifications. Interview requests from news outlets, messages of support from strangers, and most movingly, dozens of emails from other elderly people sharing their own stories of heartbreak and abuse. My private war had become a public cause. Dr. Diana Sterling called me at 9 a.m., her voice humming with triumph. Evelyn, the FBI made their move an hour ago, she said. They arrested Paul Hayes. He sang like a canary. He's given them everything on your family, the meetings, the money exchange, and a detail we didn't even know about. What is it? I asked, bracing myself. This was bigger than just getting you committed, Diana explained. Hayes confessed that Leo and Clara also paid him to create a forged will. A document that would have you leaving your entire estate to them, signed on a date after they had you declared incompetent. The plan was to commit you, present the forged will upon your death, and inherit everything, making it all look perfectly legal. The sheer, cold-blooded calculation of it still had the power to shock me. They had planned my life's end from start to finish, a neat little package of fraud and betrayal. While I was processing this new layer of their depravity, an unexpected call came through. It was Maya. Her voice was nothing like the entitled, dismissive girl from the kitchen or the panicked, reputation-obsessed one from the live stream. It was small, broken, and sounded genuinely terrified. "Grandma, can we please talk?" she whispered. "Just you and me. No lawyers, no cameras. Please." A part of me wanted to say no, to shut her out forever. But another part, the grandmother that still lived somewhere inside me, heard the raw fear in her voice. "On my terms," I said. "A public place. And I will be recording our conversation." "Whatever you want," she agreed immediately. "Just please." We met in the bustling cafe in my hotel lobby. She looked like a ghost. Her face was pale and tear-streaked, her eyes swollen. The fashionable clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, drab sweatshirt. She looked like a child who had just realized the monsters were real. "Grandma," she began before I could even sit down, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I never wanted it to get this far. I swear." "How far did you think was acceptable, Maya?" I asked, my voice even. "At first, they just talked about a nice retirement community," she explained, wringing her hands. "They said you were lonely, that you'd be happier with people your own age." I guess I wanted to believe them. But that was before they started talking about money. Before Mom started going through your papers when you were out, calling the bank pretending to be you. Every word was another small betrayal I hadn't known about. "And when did you realize this was more than just a retirement community?" I pressed. Her face crumpled. "When Mom said she couldn't wait 20 more years for you to die. That she needed the money now. For Dad's debts. She finally told me about the gambling, the 6-figure hole Leo was in, the dangerous people he owed. And then, she unconsciously placed a hand on her stomach. And you, Maya? What was your part in all this?" "I'm pregnant, Grandma," she confessed, the words barely audible. "The father, he wants nothing to do with me or the baby." I was scared. I needed money. I thought if a doctor just said you needed some extra care, we could get control of the finances and I could take what I needed for college and this. "So you were willing to sacrifice my freedom for your future," I stated flatly. "I didn't know they wanted to drive you crazy," she cried, drawing a few glances from nearby tables. "I didn't know about Plan B, I swear. I just thought it was about paperwork." "What is the difference, Maya?" I asked quietly. "The cage is still a cage, whether the bars are iron or paper." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. "When you left, Grandma, everything imploded. They do nothing but scream at each other. Dad blames Mom for being greedy. Mom blames Dad for his gambling. And now they're planning to blame me." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Last night, after the live stream, after you talked about the FBI, Dad told me that if they get arrested, their lawyer's strategy is to say I was the mastermind. That I was a rebellious, drug-addicted teenager who manipulated them into it because I needed money." "Drugs?" I asked, stunned. "I don't do drugs, Grandma," she said, looking me in the eyes. "But he said it's a more believable story. He said they'll get lighter sentences if they can pin the primary motivation on me. They're going to sacrifice their own daughter to save themselves a few years in prison." It was the final, most wretched betrayal in a long line of them. They were willing to burn their own child to the ground to lessen the heat on themselves. "Do you have any proof of this?" I asked, my mind shifting from grandmother to strategist. Maya nodded, pulling out her phone. "I've been recording them," she whispered. "Ever since you left. I was scared. I have their fights on audio. I have texts where they talk about blaming me. I even have a video of Mom trying to hide the jewelry she took from your room after you left." She had learned the art of self-preservation from the very people who were now threatening her. She had built her own arsenal. "Why are you telling me this now, Maya?" "Because I realized," she said, her voice filled with a bitter wisdom far beyond her years, "that when this is all over, I'll be completely alone. They'll be in jail, and I'll be an underage, pregnant girl with no family and no future. They used me to get to you, and now they're going to use me to save themselves. I have to choose a side. I choose yours." I looked at my granddaughter, this lost, foolish, and now terrified girl. I didn't feel forgiveness, not yet. But I felt a flicker of something else, an opportunity. An opportunity for justice, and perhaps for a different kind of redemption. "If you testify against your parents, Maya," I said slowly, "your life will be irrevocably changed. You will be choosing to sever your relationship with them forever." "That relationship is already over," she replied, her voice firming. "It ended the moment they decided I was disposable." What do you want from me in return for your testimony? Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I want you to help me. Help me finish school. Help me figure out what to do about my baby. And she hesitated. I want you to teach me how to be strong. Like you. That was the moment the tide truly turned, not just in the legal battle, but in my heart. The war had cost me a son, but it might have given me back a granddaughter. Maya, I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand. If you do this, if you tell the truth and help me secure justice, I will do more than help you. I will stand by you. We will figure out your future together. Deal, Grandma, she whispered, gripping my hand tightly. Deal, I confirmed. But you need to understand. We are allies now, and allies have to be brave. Are you ready for that? I'm more ready than I've ever been for anything, she said, a new resolve hardening her young face. The reckoning came 2 days later. As dawn broke, federal agents and local police descended on my old house. Leo and Clara were arrested in their bathrobes, their faces a mask of stunned disbelief as they were led away in handcuffs. The image, captured by a news helicopter, was the lead story on every channel by breakfast. The perfect family, exposed and dismantled. The weeks leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of legal preparations. Maya moved into the hotel with me, and under the guidance of Diana's legal team, she gave a full, detailed confession to the prosecutors. Her recordings, her videos, her testimony, they were the final, unbreakable links in the chain of evidence we had built against them. They had planned to isolate me, to make me feel alone and powerless. But as I stood with my new ally, my granddaughter, preparing for the final battle, I had never felt less alone in my life. The reckoning was here, and we were ready. The day the trial began, the courthouse was a media circus. My story had captivated the nation, becoming a symbol for the hidden epidemic of elder abuse. As I walked up the marble steps, flanked by Diana Sterling, and with Maya holding my arm, I wasn't just Evelyn Reed. I was a warrior for a silent generation, and the cameras flashed like strobing lights on a battlefield. Inside, the courtroom was packed. I saw dozens of silver-haired men and women in the gallery, strangers who had come to offer their silent support. When they brought Leo and Clara in, I barely recognized them. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by the gaunt, haunted look of people who knew their world had ended. Leo wouldn't meet my eyes. Clara just stared blankly ahead, a hollowed-out version of the vibrant woman she once was. They had chosen to plead not guilty, clinging to the delusional hope that their lawyer could paint them as concerned children and me as a manipulative, wealthy eccentric. The prosecutor was a sharp, methodical man who laid out the case with chilling precision. He played the recordings of their kitchen conspiracy, and a palpable wave of disgust rippled through the courtroom. He presented the financial records, detailing the gambling debts and credit card fraud. He called the FBI agent who testified about the sting operation with the document forger, Paul Hayes. The mountain of evidence was insurmountable. But the trial's most devastating moment came when Maya took the stand. Dressed in a simple, modest dress, she looked young and vulnerable, yet her voice was strong and clear as the prosecutor led her through her testimony. Miss Reed, he asked gently, can you tell the court what your parents' plan B was regarding your grandmother? Maya took a deep breath and looked toward the jury. Their plan was to make her believe she was going insane, she said, her voice unwavering. They were going to switch her heart medication with something else, hide her personal belongings, and gaslight her into thinking she was losing her mind. They said that within a few weeks, any doctor would agree she needed to be committed. She went on to describe their motivations, the debts, the greed, their chillingly casual discussions about how much money they would inherit upon my death. When she recounted their plan to blame her for the entire scheme, I saw several jurors shake their heads in disbelief. On cross-examination, their defense attorney tried to tear her apart. Isn't it true, Miss Reed, that you're pregnant and desperate for money? He sneered. Isn't it true that your grandmother has promised you a significant financial reward in exchange for this performance? Yes, I am pregnant, Maya replied, her chin held high. And yes, I was desperate. That's why I went along with their plans at first, a decision I will regret for the rest of my life. But my grandmother has not offered me a reward. She offered me her support when my own parents were prepared to throw me away. I am not testifying for money. I am testifying because what they did was monstrous, and it was wrong. Her simple, powerful dignity left the lawyer speechless. When it was my turn to testify, I felt a profound sense of calm. I walked to the stand, not as a victim, but as the author of this story's final chapter. The prosecutor asked, Mrs. Reed, how did it feel to learn what your family was planning? I looked directly at Leo. It felt like my entire life had been a lie, I said, my voice clear and strong. It wasn't just about the money. They didn't just want to steal my assets, they wanted to steal my mind. They wanted to erase me. For 42 years, I thought I was a mother. That day, I learned I was just an obstacle. The defense attorney tried to portray me as a vindictive woman, angry that her family had discovered her secret fortune. Mrs. Reed, you had over $5 million that you never told your son about. Don't you think he had a right to feel betrayed by that secret? A right? I asked, turning to face him. Did my son have a right to the money my husband left to protect me? Did he earn that right when he plotted to have me drugged? Did he earn it when he lied to my face for 8 months about his job? Or did he earn it when he called me a pathetic, dependent old woman? My husband's secret was an act of love. My son's secrets were acts of greed. There is no comparison. The trial lasted 5 days. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict was a foregone conclusion, guilty. On all counts. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman known for her harsh sentences in cases of abuse, looked down at Leo and Clara with undisguised contempt. You didn't just commit fraud, she said, her voice ringing through the silent courtroom. You committed an act of profound human cruelty against the woman who gave you everything. You preyed on the love and trust that should be the bedrock of a family and twisted it into a weapon for your own selfish gains. Leo was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. Clara received 10 years. As they were led away in handcuffs, Leo finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. But there was nothing left in me for him. He was a stranger. After the verdict, a scrum of reporters met us on the courthouse steps. One of them shouted, Mrs. Reed, do you feel like justice was served? I thought for a moment. Legal justice was served today, I replied. But real justice began the day I decided to stop being a victim and start being the hero of my own story. Justice is about taking back the truth they tried to steal from you. 6 months later, life is unrecognizably beautiful. I sold the old house, a place now tainted with the ghosts of lies. I bought a smaller, sun-drenched home with a beautiful garden. Maya and I live there, and last month, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom she named Hope, my great-granddaughter. Maya finished high school with honors and has been accepted into a pre-law program at the local university. She wants to dedicate her life to advocating for the elderly. The cycle of betrayal has been broken, replaced by a legacy of strength. Do I regret adopting Leo? No, I don't regret the love I gave. I only regret that I didn't learn sooner that kindness must be balanced with wisdom, and that setting boundaries is the highest form of self-respect. I have established the Reed Foundation for Elder Justice, an organization dedicated to providing legal resources and support for victims of elder abuse. My story had an ending, but for many, the fight is just beginning. My life is full now, not with the obligations of a family that took, but with the joy of a new one I am building. I have friends, I travel, I garden. But most importantly, I have learned to love myself with the same fierce devotion I once reserved only for others. They thought my story was over. But the truth is, it had just begun. My story had an ending, but for so many, the fight is just beginning. If you or someone you know is facing elder abuse, please know you are not alone and there is help. I've left a link in the description to resources that can guide you. Remember, it is never too late to reclaim your story, to rewrite your ending, and to find your own new beginning.